Today, Tom Headquarters has welcomed Phillimon Zongo, otherwise known as Phil, who is a cybersecurity specialist and legend. I had the pleasure of meeting Phil in a breakfast that we launched and co-hosted with McGrath-Nicol a few weeks ago. And Phil really stood out. He stood out for a number of reasons. Firstly, he's unbelievably passionate about the cybersecurity space. Phil knows his subject matter intimately and has got a wonderful rare talent of really simplifying the critical issues relating to cybersecurity in a really, really simple manner so we can all understand it. So for that, we thank you. So I wasn't surprised to hear that Phil is a strategic advisor, a public speaker, a prize-winning thought leader, and now the author and publisher of his first book, The 5 Anchors of Cyber Resilience. So big congratulations to you.
Thank you.
So Phil, perhaps we can start off today by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what it was like growing up in a rural town outside of Harare in Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Grant, and your team for having me here. That's a long story, but I'll try to be as brief as I can. And like I told you when we caught up recently, I grew up in a place called Mondoro, which is 120 kilometers southwest of Harare in Zimbabwe. So I come from a big family. We have 8 siblings.
Wow.
Yep, and a lot of nieces and nephews. So I grew up in this village of mine where the issue of education was paramount, because we knew that education was the only way that was going to get us out of the hardships that we went through when we were growing up.
Yeah.
So long story short, I passed my primary grades with very high marks, and my parents had this courage of taking me to a better school, which was in a township which was 23 kilometers away. My father managed to get a small place, which wasn't the best place, you know. It was quite dingy. But I lived there for about 3-4 years, and Friday nights I used to run back home, 23 Ks, and run back Monday morning. And you know, looking back, that was pretty hard, but it has served me well. So a lot of things that inspire me is I've always wanted to challenge the status quo. I hate being in the same situation for a long time, and that's why I just keep, you know, pushing myself. And I came here to Australia working for PwC about 11 years ago, and I spent about 3-4 years with PwC, moved briefly to Dimension Data. I was there for just 6 months. Then I went to AMP, started off as a technology risk manager for about 4 years. And then I realized that, like I said before, I had done this for quite some time and I needed a new challenge, and cyber was the natural step, because I already understood the inner workings of IT and governance and stuff. So I thought I would translate my skills into cybersecurity. So I moved into cybersecurity hardcore about say 3 years ago, but it's something that I've always done for the last 14 years. So I used to do IT security reviews with PwC and Deloitte. So I thought I would specialize given where we are going in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an excellent move. I don't regret, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Well, it's an unbelievably inspiring story, and one which no doubt your children one day will grow up to be inspired by, and I'm sure you're very proud of yourself, and your parents are very proud of you as well. So big congratulations to you. When we make career decisions, and I'm always intrigued with the answer to these questions because I obviously interview people every day, right? Yeah. I'm always intrigued to get an understanding to what degree guys like yourself make your career decisions based on the use of mentors, both internal to the organization or external to the organization, or with a little bit of a smattering of gut feel. To what degree have your career decisions to date been made through mentorship or gut feel?
I think it's been mixed. So starting off where I grew up, like I said, the concept of mentorship rarely existed. You know, my mentor was effectively my father, who was a farmer. He was a communal farmer. So there were people in the community that we looked up to, you know, like teachers. You know, when you have no shoes and a teacher comes well dressed, like yourself, you know, with a nice suit and, you know, shiny shoes, and you've never had shoes for 12 years, that naturally inspires you.
Yes.
So for me, it was natural progression. You know, I was looking up to the people within my sphere of influence,
Yes.
based on the present circumstances. When I left my village to go to high school in Goromonzi, which was maybe one of the best public schools in Zimbabwe, to do my Form 5 and 6, my world suddenly changed, because, you know, I started interacting with kids of ministers and, you know, people from very well-loved backgrounds, and I was coming straight from my village.
Yeah.
So the concept of mentorship and looking up to some heroes in life has always been very dynamic for me. It's something that I wish, you know, I understood early on, and I had access to mentors, because I think they play a fundamental role in help us shape our careers and decide what we need to do early.
Yeah.
So I've always been in IT for as long as I graduated, but I didn't know, you know, about cybersecurity when I finished university, assuming that I knew earlier on, or someone came to me and exposed the wide domain of IT, you know, all the different options that is there. I would have made my decisions earlier.
Yes.
And I think I would be much further in my career path than I am now. So where I am now is I try to get as much mentorship as I can. I'm very lucky, I'm very connected. So I'm connected to some very experienced CISOs. You know, within work, I work for some of the most fantastic leaders. And looking back to your point, an area of mentorship is something that I do as well. So ever since I put my story out there, it has inspired a lot of people. So I have had people travel from, you know, from the Philippines to Sydney and look up for me, and we caught up for coffee. And
an opportunity to give back.
Yeah, and I have stayed in touch with them and tried to help them in their careers as well. I mentor a number of people all over the world, back in Africa, in America. Yeah, so it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I wish to do more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. So this topic of cybersecurity, it's unbelievably hot right now, and has been for a while, and I think will be for the foreseeable future. It'll be on the agenda of most corporate boardrooms around Australia and the world. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so big and so hot?
I think the issue of cybersecurity is so big because of a number of factors. The number one issue is relating to the digitization of businesses. So over the last decade, we have seen a lot of shift from traditional enterprise into digital enterprises. So we've got vast amounts of information, you know, sensitive information, personally identifiable information, intellectual property that's now stored online. And by doing so, that has really expanded the cyber attack surface. So as you know, hardly a week goes by without a major cyber breach making the headlines. And some of them are crippling some of the most resourced and complex enterprises, you know, organizations like the NSA in America, arguably one of the best cybersecurity enterprises in the world. They hire some of the brightest hacking minds. And in 2016, you know, the NSA was hacked, and the same weapons were repurposed to launch the WannaCry ransomware, which crippled hospitals in Britain, large companies like Cadbury chocolate. So the issue of the shift of data from your traditional isolated systems into cloud computing environments has really made the whole cybersecurity landscape much more complex. Other issues as well relates to the rapid intersection between cybersecurity and politics. Mm-hmm. So big nations themselves that are supposed to be taking a leadership role in combating this threat are themselves involved in cyber warfare. You know, they develop complex programs to spy on adversary nations, to spy on their own citizens, on opposition parties, on dissidents. So the prospects of countries coming together and coming up with binding laws where hackers could be extradited from one country to another, mm-hmm. It sounds feels very remote at this point in time. Yep. So, long story short, I would say the issue of cybersecurity is an important subject for any enterprise. Yep. And as many have said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you'll be hacked. Yeah. Because if they target you, it's likely that they are going to get in your systems. Yeah. That's why we bring in the concept of cyber resiliency. Yeah. We're shifting the mindset from traditional cyber defense into resiliency to say, if you are hacked, how quickly can you respond and come back, minimizing impacts on your bottom line and your customers. Yeah. So it is a big problem.
What do you then think are the opportunities and challenges for the cyberspace over the next, say, 12 to 24 months?
I think the issue, there are quite a number of issues, which brings me to the 5 anchors anyway. So cybersecurity is so broad, and I think the biggest problem that we have is a lot of companies are overwhelmed. They don't know where to start, and even the existing cybersecurity frameworks, you know, excellent frameworks like NIST and COVID and ISO, they are excellent frameworks, but they're very difficult for some companies, especially the ones in the small to medium enterprises to, you know, PCI is more than 220 controls. Where do you start? So for me, there are quite a number of areas that we need to focus on. The first one is developing highly focused cybersecurity strategies that are centered on your most important digital assets, which we call crown jewels. The second issue is having executive buy-in and board oversight. You know, cybersecurity is a transformational journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But as we know, with digital transformation, nothing happens without executive support. Yes. So you need the executives to be involved into cybersecurity, to understand how cybersecurity affects the business, and be able to hold middle managers accountable. So the book helps them understand what it means in business terms and translate that. The other area as well is pertaining to, like I said, digital transformation. There's a lot of technologies, you know, Internet of Things, you know, 20 billion devices poorly secured, permeating very important industries like, you know, mining, airlines, hospitals, even homes, you know. Internet connected baby monitors are being hacked, and, you know, internet perverts are trying to get into homes, and that's quite concerning to many parents. So baking cybersecurity, understanding this digital landscape and the new vulnerabilities that are associated with each transformation project is very important as well. The other key area of focus is going to be cybersecurity assurance across business partners. You know, organizations are outsourcing key business processes to offshore business partners, and we know that the majority of the cyber attacks have emanated from poorly secured third-party environments, like the Target hack in 2013, where more than 40 million payment card details were exfiltrated. You know, they got in via a third party, which is involved in managing their refrigeration, you know. Very easy to overlook, but the complex world of interconnected business parties needs a lot of focus as well.
Yeah.
So there's quite a number of areas to focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Phil. So you obviously have successfully authored a book, which is obviously very fresh, it's contemporary, it's a very easy to read strategy book. You have been an award-winning author of articles. You have got successful podcasts. What inspired you to be, for want of a better term, the voice of your space?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point. I use some analogy in my book to explain this issue, which is in Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar, where a soothsayer comes to Julius Caesar and say, be aware of the Ides of March. It was a very important message, but it was shrouded in obscurity. So, unsurprisingly, Julius Caesar was sarcastic and said, he's besides himself, let us leave him alone. For me, and on the 15th of March, 44 BC, it was a bad day for Caesar. He was stabbed 23 times. For me, this is exactly the same situation that we have in cybersecurity, that the significance of the message is without a doubt. We are seeing a growing appetite by senior business leaders to understand how this threat affects their businesses and what they need to do to address it. But the subject of cybersecurity is still highly complex and very ambiguous. They don't know where to start. For me, that was my number one motivation to say, it is my responsibility. The number one thing that I want to focus on the next decade is to simplify the cybersecurity message, to make it, to take it outside of the cybersecurity function into the wider business community. Because for us to effectively address this risk, everyone needs to play their part, right from the board of directors to frontline personnel. In organizations where I've worked in cybersecurity, you realize that some of the most important threats are not prevented by technology, they're prevented by people. People being aware of what they need to do, being cyber savvy to detect even increasingly sophisticated cyber phishing attacks. It's very important. So for me, that's the number one motivation, to say, let everyone play their part. But how can they play their part if they don't understand what this subject means? And that's what motivated me to write the book and many other thought leadership articles that I write for ISACA mostly.
It's an excellent point, and I think a lot of Tom's clients are the larger end of town, very sophisticated with large cyber teams. But we've also got a number of smaller, medium-sized businesses where you'll have risk professionals or finance professionals very busy doing their day jobs and doing it very, very well. And probably as a result of them doing it well, suddenly the critical agenda item of cybersecurity has been thrown onto their desk and thrown into their portfolio. What advice do you have to these kind of people in the small and medium side of town as to where to start, where to begin on their cyber journey?
That's a really excellent point. And just to add to your point as well, is over the last few years we've seen small to medium enterprises disproportionately targeted by cyber attackers as compared to large enterprises. And it's quite obvious because they've got weaker defenses, it's easier and cheaper. There's quite a number of recommendations. I think the first thing is to realize where your core capabilities lie. Do you really want to develop a full-blown cybersecurity team, or you want to outsource some of the key cybersecurity responsibilities to third parties that can do this at scale and with vast, cybersecurity resources? So I think the concept of outsourcing plays a critical role to say, instead of building your own security operations center where you've got people looking 24/7 into your systems and cyber alerts, why can't you outsource that to a specialist SOC team who can backfill with thousands of highly skilled, malware reverse engineers and SOC analysts who've done it for years.
Yeah.
And these guys work across different industries as well, so they've got very strong insights. So I think it comes from developing a well-thought strategy to say, this is where we want to go. And I would say, instead of jumping to say, if you got maturity level from 1 to 5, it's a journey, like I said before. You're gonna chunk it into different portions to say, what are the most important things that we can focus on right now? Things like security awareness, it brings the highest return on cybersecurity investment. You bring in a security awareness specialist, they train your staff, you significantly reduce your cyber risk exposure, rather than going in to buy expensive tools and try to configure them over years. So I think you need a good strategy.
I remember you saying at the breakfast as well that sometimes internal staff and employees are more inclined to listen to someone external who's perceived to be an external cyber specialist coming into the business and talking about their risks.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I think it happens everywhere, even at home. If people have issues, it's always better to bring an external party. They're inclined to listen to an independent voice. And like I said, bringing in a cybersecurity awareness specialist maybe for 1 week, do face-to-face meetings, do some phishing simulations, train staff into how they can effectively respond to real attacks is very powerful, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So I think cybersecurity awareness is definitely a quick win, and it's one of the anchors of 5 anchors of cyber resilience.
Well, it's becoming glaringly obvious that this book is a must-read. But besides talking highly of your own book, Phil, are there any other must-read books that are sitting in Phil Zongo's library at home that you'd recommend to the your network and our network that think would be equally inspiring?
So I would say my focus has always been on books that are much simple to read, and I found a book called Beyond Cybersecurity or Beyond Cyber Resiliency, which was written by a number of McKinsey consultants. I would strongly recommend. It greatly shaped the way I thought about cyber, and I think I refer it in a couple of places in my book as well.
Good.
So it's a very easy read for people who not coming from a highly technical background.
So Phil, you're a young man and you've got young children at home. Let's fast forward a few decades, and you're now a grandfather. What advice, what are kind of 3 life lessons you'd give to your grandkids around building a successful life and career?
The first thing I would say is I believe a lot of things, they seem impossible until they're done. For me, my life story says it all. There's no way growing up where I grew, I would ever thought of, doing what I'm doing right now. So you have to dream, but dreams by themselves are nothing. You have to dream and act. I think that's the number one thing. And we often told to try by all means to align what we do with our passion, and I think that's very powerful. I'm very lucky that after more than a decade of trying to discover myself, I have landed in a place where I have aligned my passion with what I'm doing, and I love what I'm doing, and I don't do it because of money. Of course, we all want to get paid, that's reality. But I have found a place where, I found a problem to solve, and for me, that's very powerful, because the work itself gets hold of you. It makes it all a lot easy. The last thing I would say is skill is very important, but often overrated. The important thing is focus, determination. Perseverance is very important, because in whatever you do, once you get past a certain level of mental obstruction, everything becomes like you're in a cruise zone. But getting past that point is very hard.
Yeah.
So a lot of people start things. Writing a book is a classic example. You know, when you start, I started with one line and one paragraph and stayed on that one paragraph for maybe a week.
Yeah.
Because writing is very hard.
Yes.
Because you need to, if you have to write, say, 100 words, it means you need to read maybe 10,000 words, you know, because you want to bring fresh ideas.
Sure, sure.
So I think, you know, you need to have those values in life to realize that something that's important, something that's unique, is never going to come easy. But you need to persevere past that initial hurdle. And once you get past, you know, things get much easier.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Phil,
it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up, as always. It's been very, very inspiring, thought-provoking, and interesting. Tom Executive are unbelievably excited to be co-sponsoring your book launch. That is happening at the Hilton Hotel on the 26th of June. That's a Tuesday evening starting from 6 p.m.
Yeah.
For those interested in an invite, act quickly because spaces are going fast.
They are.
So you can either private message Phil, myself, or Matthew Nicholas, who is the practice lead for cybersecurity at Tom Executive. You'll also have an opportunity to listen to our very own Matt talk about recruitment trends, what's hot in the cyberspace, who's hiring, what kind of salaries and bonuses you can expect. And you'll also obviously have the opportunity to rub shoulders with peers and colleagues in the cyber community. So I hope to see you all there. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, mate.
All
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you.